guys, how's it going? We're going to talk today about going from decimals to percents to fractions and between all three of them. The reason we have to kind of sidestep and do this is that in order to do some of these assignments on IXL where you have to insert circle graphs and things like that, we need to kind of backstep and go through how to go through decimals and percents and things like that. Not a bad skill to have just in everyday life. So I'm going to put this up on our website as a picture I found. I use with my 7th graders, and it works wonders. I'm pretty much just going to tell you how to get from each one of these. Sorry about that. This will help you get between any and kind of the shortest way. There's a lot of different ways to do these problems. And, what I want to do is I want to go through these as straightforward as possible. It'll be the absolute bare minimum easiest way to do things, which is going to work for a lot of you guys. You need to have a calculator. So if you're going to do a lot of these short, fast ways to do things, you need a calculator. And then I'll show you guys some tricks on how you can do some of these afterwards. Okay. So this, I got some questions here. I might put this up there as well. I had some pretty good tips and pointers in the notes section of it that maybe I'll post in the next few days. But the first thing says understand what a percent is, okay? And so what a percent is a percent is a way of expressing things in terms of 100s, right? So you've seen this if you've ever gone to a store anywhere and they say things are 50% off. Percents are useful in expression and talking about things. The symbol for percents, if you guys don't know, is this one, okay? And this is percent, which means per 100. Cent means 100. And I don't know if you guys remember, but per means we're going to divide. Okay, so literally, percent literally means divide by 100. Okay, so for these it says write each as a fraction with a denominator of 100. So 20% is a useful way of categorizing things. But as far as when we do operations in math, that actually means 20 over 100. And again, what is that? Well, that is, you can reduce it as a fraction, you can change it to a decimal, and you can simplify it. But we'll get to that later, okay? So the first few just wants it as a denominator of 100, okay? So 48 with the denominator of 100 with number 6 here. 48% means 48 out of 100. And again, if you guys want to, these are hundreds. This is 20 hundredths. If you guys remember anything about decimals, that is, well, there's the tenths place and the hundredths place, right? So this would be 20 hundredths, okay, or 0.2. 0.2, right? You don't really need that last zero there, but that's kind of going to be a sticking point for a lot of you guys. 48 hundredths, again, ones place, tens place, hundreds place, this would be 48 hundredths, okay, or 0.48. Okay, so we'll go through all these things, okay? For this one, to change things into a decimal, it's pretty straightforward. And again, I will loop back around some tips and tricks for you guys, but really, to change a percent to a decimal, and this is on here, to change a percent to a decimal, literally you're just going to divide by 100. Right? How do I go from percent to a decimal? I divide by 100. So if I want to know what's 23% as a decimal, I'm literally going to take 23 and I'm going to divide it by 100% per 100, right? 0.23. These are usually not a hard thing for people. 34% is 34 divided by 100, and that's going to be 34%. Where people get into trouble are things like number 13 here, 9%. 9 divided by 100 is 0.09. Okay, so again, let's think about that for a second. What we were saying before, 9% means what? 9%. That's tenths, hundredths, right? So 9 hundredths would be 0.09, not 0.9, and that's where a lot of mistakes are made, okay? But again, to get from percent to a decimal, you're just going to divide by 100. To go in the other way, to get from a decimal to a percent, all you need to do, get from a decimal to a percent, is multiply by 100, okay? So if we go back and we say, hey, what's 0.23? Well, again, 0.23 is not a percent. If we want to express that as a percent, we multiply it times 100, and we would say that that would be, oops, 0.23 times 100 is going to be 23, and okay, and you have to remember, you are going to have to remember to put the percent sign in there. Okay, if you had to do something like this one right here, number 27, 0.03, 0.03 times 100. Okay, and what is that going to be? 0.03 times 100, and that would be 3. So that would be 3%. So no big deal there, just literally multiplying these numbers by 100. If you have a calculator, it's very, very simple. Okay. Your next one is to change each percent to a fraction. If you want to change a percent to a fraction, all you really have to do is take it and put it over 100. So what's 4% as a fraction? Well, that's 4% divided by 100. Okay, and then what should you do? Yeah, you should reduce. So 4 goes into 4 once. 4 goes into 125 times. It's 1/25. Okay. When you get things like this, they're much harder to turn into decimals. So we'll talk about that in a bit. Again, if we took something like 26.5%, 26.5%. Okay, what is that? That's also, what is that? That's 26.5 100ths. Okay. And again, this becomes a little bit harder to reduce. You can reduce it, but I would say probably leave it just like that. That's totally fine. Okay. Let's talk about 0.75%. Again, 0.75%. What is that? That's 0.75 over 100. Now be careful. A lot of people see that decimal. This is still 0.75 over 100. That's about all you're going to be able to do with these things, okay? All right, now let's talk about our last one, which is turning fractions into decimals and into percents, which is probably the most challenging out of all of them, okay? So if we have our notes here, if we want to turn a fraction into a decimal, it says use the place value in the decimal digits. We'll talk about what that means in a second. And to a fraction, we're going to use equivalent fractions to change the denominator to 100, then read off the denominator. So very, very complicated stuff here. That's probably why it's last, okay? Let's talk about it. 1/2. 1/2. Okay, now listen, 1/2, you guys should know that 1/2 is 50% or 0.5, okay? So 1/2, first of all, we want to change this to a decimal, okay? So if you want to change it to a decimal, all you do, break out your calculator. If you want to change to a decimal, literally you're just going to divide. 1 divided by 2, 0.5. Okay, so very, very easy. So these instructions that they're going to give you, okay, they're going to be a little bit, I'm sorry, I read you the wrong one, okay, right here. Numerator divided by the denominator to get to a decimal. To get it from a fraction to a percentage, says use equivalent fractions to change the denominator to 100, then read off the numerator. You're actually better off taking the fraction, changing it to a decimal, than changing it to a percent. So this is probably, even though it's 2 more steps, remember, one step is divide using your calculator, the second step is multiply by 100. So it's really not as much work as you might see. It's actually much more work to go straight across. Okay. So again, so and 0.5 again was, now I need to multiply times 100, right? Well, what's 0.5 times 100? 0.5 times 100 is going to be 50%. Okay, let's do 7/8. 7/8. 7 divided by 8. 7 divided by 8 is going to be 0.875. Okay, if I want to turn that into a percent, I multiply it times 100. So yeah, 0.875 is equal to 87.5%. Okay, so again, that should give you guys about all you need to do this. I'll go over one of these with mixed numbers, 3 1/4. Okay, 3 1/4. Well, let's start off by saying this. We know that 3 is here. Okay, that's done. That is a number in front of decimal point. That's the number 3. That's 3 in the 1 spot. Okay. Now, 1 divided by 4 is 0.25. Okay. So keep that whole number up here in front. Okay. Put the 0.25 after, and now let's multiply that times 100. 3 times 3.25 times 100. Okay. So anyway, that should get you guys what you need. That's 325%, which by the way is totally fine. I know 100% as a whole, but 325% is totally fine. So that's enough to get you guys started. So if you guys are ready to go on and get ready to work, that's fine. I'm going to show you guys a few quick tips. I don't want to take up too much of your guys' time, but if you're ready to go, go. If not, stay tuned right now, and I will give you a few more tips on how to do these things. Okay. All right. So if, say, for example, you don't have a calculator handy, okay. Again, change each percent to a decimal. We'll say the 23% is really 23 over 100. So what do you know that that's, again, 0 tenths hundredths, right? Another thing you could say is that when you divide by 100, there are 2 zeros. Therefore, you need to move the decimal spot 2 places. So I have 23%, and the decimal is here. When I divide by 10, it becomes 2.3%. When I divide by another 10, right, and 10 times 10 is 100, it becomes 0.23. So all you really have to do for all these numbers is move your decimal point 1 spot, 2 spots, 0.34. 1 spot, 2 spots, 0.92. 87, 1 spot, 2 spots, 0.87. Okay. Again, you can pick your choice here. Where again it becomes a problem is when you have stuff like this, 9%. Well, the decimal point is here, and I need to move it 2 spots, right? Because when I divide by 100, I need 1 spot for the tenths and 1 spot for the hundredths. Well, once it's here, and to move it a second time, I need 1 here, so that would be 0.09, and that's where most mistakes are made. Okay, so this one will be 0.07, 0.034. Okay, so you got to make sure you have 2 spots to move it, so you got to throw another 0 on there if you have to. Okay. Changing decimals to a percent is the exact opposite. Multiplying by 100 means you're going to move it 2 decimal spots in the other way. Okay, so what is this? 1, 2 spots, 23%. 1, 2 spots, 34%. Right? 1, 2 spots, 92%. And again, where's the problem come? When you have something like this. 1, 2 spots, 3%, right? Here, right? 0.6. 1 spot, 2 spots. So what is that? That's actually 60%, right? 0.9, 0.9. Again, 1 spot, 2 spots, that becomes 90%. Okay? And the last really kind of difficult thing, to change a fraction to a decimal. If you don't have a calculator, you could do long division, but if I think about something like 1/4, right? 1/4. Well, if I want it to be a percent, if I want it to be a percent, what do I need to make this denominator 100? Well, it's 4, and I know that 4 times 25 makes 100, right? Well, if I multiply the bottom by 25, I have to multiply the top by 25. That becomes 25 over 100, which equals 25%. Okay, so that is the kind of short way it says to here, which again is more useful if you don't have a calculator, and it gives you a better kind of conceptual understanding. So let's talk about something like, oh, I don't know. It's going to be tough in some cases. If I had 1/8. Now, 1/8 is tricky, right? 1/8 is tricky because I don't have a number. 8 times what makes 100, right? it doesn't work out all that well here. So I need to have kind of a different way of thinking about this. Well, how do I find out 8 times what number makes 100? 8 times what number makes 100? Oh, can I just do 100 divided by 8? Well, what is 100 divided by 8? 100 divided by 8 is, oops, 100 divided by 8 is 12.5. So if I can multiply the bottom by 12.5, I can multiply the top by 12.5. And what do you get? You get 12.5 over 100, or 12.5%. Again, when you start working with these things, you'll start to notice some handy things that'll come in handy. So I'll do like 51 says 7 over 50. Well, that one's pretty easy. I multiply the bottom by 2. I multiply the top by 2. So it's 14 over 100, or 14%. So in a case like this, it's much more difficult. And once you start working with fractions and decimals, you'll know 0.125 has a specific meaning and things like that. You'll kind of understand what they mean. But in the meantime, again, 9 over 25, multiply the bottom by 4, multiply the top by 4. If you have a situation where the denominator is very easily made into 100, then it's easy to do. If you have something like this, you're probably better off taking the long way around. It might just be faster. So it depends on how good you guys are with the numbers. So I hope this helped, didn't confuse you guys too much. It was just a quick refresher, but I will talk to you guys tomorrow.